I'm Helen Sharman, first British astronaut, and I'm here at the Royal Society Summer Exhibition to talk about my spaceflight.
So what's it like being an astronaut?
I think the hardest question to answer is what is it like, because it's so diverse. You know, there's the rocket, there's the companionship with your crew members, there's the just feeling weightless, there's looking out the window, there's doing things that you can't do on Earth, you know, growing crystals of protein, for instance, looking at the way plants grow. So much that we can't do, and I think it's that combination of things that just makes it so special.
Have you always wanted to be an astronaut?
I never even imagined being an astronaut until I heard of, well, it was really an advert on the car radio as I was driving home from work. In Britain, you know, we don't do things like being an astronaut. I mean, when I was young, growing up in the 1960s, the Americans were going to the moon and the Russians, well, the Soviets were in space, but British people didn't go into space, so I did things that I thought, well, everybody else wanted to do. I wanted to be a nurse, then I wanted to be a doctor, and then I wanted to be some sort of a process engineer, but never an astronaut. And it was not until I actually heard of this chance, astronaut wanted, no experience necessary, and that really was how the advert started. It was a chance. This was a chance that the Soviet Union was opening up for people from different countries. They were asking the countries if they wanted to send one of their nationals into space. And a company was set up in Britain to manage this mission, and I applied for the job.
What was it like when you first got into space?
Going into space is it's full of instructions, you know. So you have to do what you're told to do. There's a process. You can't suddenly decide to change the process because everything else is relying on what you're doing as well. So you're strapped into the seat. The launch itself takes a mere 8 minutes, and then you're feeling weightless, except you're still strapped into the seat because you've got another hour and a half to go of doing all the checks to make sure everything's functioning as it should. You might need to make an emergency return to Earth. So to make sure that everything's fine, you go through all these checks, and then finally, when you can unstrap, and then you just float out of your seat. That's the time when your whole body gets to really feel free, although you're in this tiny cramped capsule for another couple of days until you get to the space station. On the space station, then you can just stretch out and float from one end of the module, you know, right down to the other end. That's the time actually when the doctors on Earth say, for goodness sake, don't look down the other end because you might actually feel space sick. So one of the commonest problems, about 50% of all astronauts and cosmonauts is actually sick. They vomit in space. It's the same reason that you sometimes car sick, travel sick on Earth, and your eyes are giving your brain signals. The balance system in your ears is giving your brain totally different signals, and there's no up or down for your balance system to feel in space, so your brain gets confused. So the doctors say, don't look at the long distance, keep everything short focused, and then your likelihood is you'll be okay. So fortunately we were fine, none of us were sick, and we were able to enjoy that length of the space station. But lots of different feelings on getting to the space station.
I guess this is a bit of a graphic question, but with the sick float in the air as well?
We're told that if you're going to be sick, you're stick into a sick bag, and then you tie it tightly, and then you put the bag into another bag, because it's not only the actual substance, but also it smells, and that can set off other people. So don't want to be sick if you can avoid it. Don't be sick in space.
So what's food like in space?
So the space food is food that is conserved essentially. So it's just like if you're going to go, you can just imagine going on a 3-month journey to, I suppose it's similar going to the South Pole, except you don't need quite so much calories in space. So you take up tins, you take up dried food, a lot of dried food, because then of course you don't have to take the water, which weighs. Not that things weigh in space, but they weigh on the rocket going up, so you have a lot more fuel to take them up. So yes, I remember a lot of dried fruit juice. You need a lot of fibre to keep the digestive system going. I remember, I went on a Russian space station, so I had Russian space food, so tins of fish with tomato sauce, the very dark bread, the rye bread that is very typically Russian bread, which is very tasty actually, tubes of cream cheese. The drinking in space is probably one of the most fun things to do, because yes, you can have fruit juice from your packet, you can have coffee from a packet, but water you can take just from a canister, pipe leading to a little mouthpiece. Now, of course, you're supposed to put the mouthpiece in your mouth. You keep your own mouthpiece in your pocket, and then you put that on the end of the tube, and then everything's fine. But people can't be bothered to take their mouthpiece out, and it's much more fun to fire the water either at yourself or preferably at somebody else, being very careful not to drop anything behind you in case you get water floating around the space station. But yeah, you can then just catch the drops of water as they come blobbing towards you.
That does sound really fun. So if there was this is probably me showing my scientific ignorance, but if there was in our lifetime a manned mission to Mars, would you sign yourself up for it?
A manned mission to Mars takes an awful long time. At the moment, it's about 3 years, a round trip. So, in principle, yes, I would love to go to Mars. Of course, you're not feeling weightless when you're on the surface, but then, think of the fabulous exploration you can do, the things you can start to really understand, not only about Mars, but about ourselves by being there. The weightlessness on the way would be fun, and I'd enjoy that. I'd enjoy the team spirit, I'm sure, of the people that were doing all the things together. But 3 years is a long time to give up. So I think you have to be at a certain stage in your life. You have to have nobody really depending on you, that kind of thing. So, as with any big trip like that, yes, it would be fab to go, but perhaps you can't be quite so selfish as you get a bit older in life.